Welcome back, game design students. In this video, I'm going to introduce volumes. And in a game engine, a volume is simply a defined space where something happens. In Unreal Engine, the volumes can be found over here in the Actors tab. If you click the Volumes tab here, you'll see all sorts of volumes. We have a blocking volume, which simply blocks a player from moving past it. And we can use these to define the outer perimeters of our world. There are lots of different volumes in here. The three that we're going to be working with mostly will be the blocking volume and the trigger volume, which you were introduced to in the ball game project, the physics volume, which allows you to alter the game world physics inside the boundaries of the volume, and the post-processing volume. Right now, let's look at the post-processing volume. I'm going to drag one into my world here. Now, I actually already have one in my world. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. And here you can actually define an area inside which something changes. For example, if you were to go underwater, you could tint the world. Well, let me make this a little bigger. And if you select the post-processing volume over here in the details panel, you can see that it has quite a lot of settings. I'm going to work with, in particular, the lens flare setting, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now, when I look at the sun, right now I don't see anything, but if I go inside the volume and look at the sun, I see a lens flare. It's not very intense. You can see it right there. I'm going to dial up the intensity of it and you'll be able to see it. Outside the volume, I don't see it. If I were to, say, go underwater inside this volume, I can also tint the scene. I could tint it blue as if I were underwater. And under here, I'm going to open up the global, and I'm going to try to find tints. Well, let's just use this one. And I'm going to saturate everything blue, and you can see it changing immediately. I'm going to bring up the blue a lot. You can clearly see that the scene is now much bluer and looks totally different inside the volume. If I leave the volume, it looks the same. Anytime you change a setting in one of these things, you'll see a little arrow here. If you click the arrow, that will reset it to the default. If you uncheck the box, that will negate the effect. Let's look at the bloom setting. Under bloom, if you open this up, that will allow you to have light sort of do that. And that looks really good, particularly when you're in a confined space. If you want the post-processing volume to affect the entire world, you could make it the size of the world, but another thing you could do is you could scroll down here and find infinite extent. And if you click that, then the volume will affect the whole world, whether you're inside it or not. One of the things we can use the post-processing volume for, in addition to changing the look of the scene, is we could also deal with the problem that Unreal has where the brightness is adjusted in kind of a weird way. To fix that problem, we go to the exposure rollout and we click min and max brightness. And if we change these both to 1, then that clamps the brightness down so that it doesn't change in a weird way. Another way we might use a post-processing volume is if the character's health is diminished inside the volume or inside the space where someone is attacking. You could have the saturation of the scene go down as if the character is dying. You could also add what's called a dirt mask to your camera. And inside the post-processing volume, you need a texture for that. And what that does is gives your camera sort of a gritty look. And that's common in games like Call of Duty and battle games like that. You can also adjust the depth of field here, which is a nice thing. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And this is just something that you just have to play with. That will make objects in the distance look blurry. And you've got to be real careful with it. So I want you to add a post-processing volume to your scene and at least turn on the exposure clamping, the brightness clamping that we did, and possibly play around with lens flare and depth of field and tint and stuff like that. And I'll see you in the next video.